I will continue my teachings on missiology that I've been doing for some time now. And I want you to have an understanding of the missiology components, the biblical basis of missions, the cultural sensitivity and context, the history, and the strategies. First, the biblical basis is the Bible, and it runs from Genesis to Revelation as a component of the redemptive plan of God. With the fall of Adam and Eve and provision being made for restoration, God making it clear that it is the seed of the woman that will bruise the serpent. That's why you see that running down the New Testament, the serpent or the devil is called the accuser of the brethren. We have the different covenants or redemptive covenants. And we have different people who have been called following the typological principles of hermeneutics, the science of interpretation and application of biblical concepts into mission work. We know about the Adamic covenant and what happened when Adam couldn't keep the covenants because of the influence of Eve. Though we don't blame Eve, we diminish responsibility for Eve, but we don't absolve her completely of responsibility in and for the fall. And then we come to say Noah, and Noah's Ark, and the flooding of the world, the Naomi covenant, then the call of Abraham, Isaac, going down to Moses in Egypt, and the history of the children of Abraham and Isaac, and the Hebrew children, and the story of Joseph, the other children of the patriarch. For Jacob and his Joseph and Joseph's brothers, and they are going down to Egypt, and Joseph becoming prime minister, and then the population in Egypt, and Pharaoh, and the new Pharaoh, and the punishment of God's people for the hundreds of years that God had promised that they would be in captivity in Egypt, and deliverance through God's messenger and agent, Moses, and the Mosaic covenant, and Joshua, and the judges and the kings, and Moses' brother Aaron, and the Aaronic priesthood, and then the different prophets. God never called them minor or majors. You do. But Isaiah foretold extensively the Christocentric work of salvation of Jesus Christ the Lamb of God who was coming to save the world and his people from sin. And he recruited the 12 and also Paul for the ministry to the Gentiles. Biblically, we see this progression of the redemptive movement and work of God from the Old Testament to the New Testament. The apostles wrote about the ministry and methodology or methods of Jesus. Mark, Matthew, John, and then Luke, the physician, who was an associate to Paul, came in and wrote the gospel according to Luke. That also shows the emphasis on the miraculous healing evangelistic methods of Jesus Christ and the apostles. We see the acts of the Holy Spirit, I call it the acts of the apostles, which is attributed also to Luke. Tells us that when the Holy Spirit fell in Acts 2, the disciples were empowered and they began to preach the gospel of the kingdom, with the centrality of Christ as the key to the kingdom. And that God gave the increase. As Paul says, Paul plants, Apollo waters, and God gives the increase. And then after that, after Christ is gone, we see the ministry of the apostles, the tribulations and trials and temptations, the resistance from the different cultures and the different contexts under which the gospel was preached, and the coming of Paul and his ministry to the Jews, and rejection by the Jews, and his emphasis on the Gentiles, and then going right down to the last chapter of Acts, where we see that Paul is going from one city and expanding towards Rome and going towards Asia and Malta, all those places. And after the death of the apostles, the works of Stephen the evangelist and Philip, how the ministry continues by the apostolic fathers. And then we'll talk about the different popes in Alexandria, those in Rome and others. And then the different 500 blocks, 1,000 years after, 1,500 years after the Reformation, and other things which have happened in the history of mission. All of that must be put in context as we teach, and as we send missionaries and evangelists to the nations.